Hello and welcome to a special edition here. This is Tony on a solo mission here today. Speaking on the issue of Record Store Day in general. Record Store Day is coming up on 4/20/24, and there's some general observations that we both have pretty strong opinions about a lot of stuff. I guess cranky old men, that's what happens. But we've been both collecting a long period of time, as we said before, and Record Store Day's really been a period each year which, despite my protestations or whatever, I still spend a lot of money every year on records. There's always five, six, or seven that I want. Um, Generally, my feeling about Record Store Day, certainly it's good to, basically it's good the way it started. It was good to fund the independent record stores. But I think just in general, there have been a couple of things that have happened that have been really good, and a couple of things that have been bad. I think the Grateful Dead, for instance, over the long haul, have probably handled it pretty well. I mean, there is a glut of things, and but I think they've been very smart about the selection of the shows that they've done. Like they did the special run in 1977, highlighting all those. I think that was a smart move. There've been there have been, though, for my taste, and as much as you're going to hear on these broadcasts that I am not a fan of reissues as opposed to originals, there becomes a very practical point of things that originals essentially run out after a period of time. And there are also a whole lot of records that were released in very limited quantities back in the waning days of vinyl in the late 80s, early 90s, and some of the things through the mid 90s. And that's going to be one of my tips today is going to be somewhat of a rant on the same subject, but we'll get back to that when it becomes time. But there've been, in my opinion, there's an over reliance on these live recordings. I've been an avid collector for years and years. I have a large bootleg live collection, which I traded for years and years and years. Started off being a Todd Rundgren taper, and recorded a lot of shows myself. We're really good friends with people who did a really good job and still do a great job to this day. I don't follow it the way that I did at one time. I kind of gave my whole thing over to somebody else, and they did really well with it. But nevertheless, I'm not just speaking about Todd, but I'm talking about my collection across the board. It just seems like in Record Store Day, I end up buying the better of these on vinyl many times. I'm not that much interested in these things as I am in really studio outtakes or repressings of records that are very difficult to find. Uh, it's dismayed me for some time. I'm a big Alan Holdsworth fan, and I'm very dismayed at the way his name has kind of dropped out of the limelight here. I'm hearing that there's going to be a movie, and I think the man sorely deserves one. But there are a great number of his records on vinyl that made it in the box set, and I have the box set. I guess I could go over and get it, but I don't want to get off camera here. But I'll show it to you at some point, I'm sure, because it's like my favorite thing in the world. But my favorite piece in the world, probably. It's probably my favorite. If I had to only have one piece, die with one piece, I'd take my Alan Holdsworth box set, probably. But albums like Wardenclyffe Tower, None Too Soon, records like that have never been on vinyl before, outside of that box set. And something as important as Wardenclyffe Tower, I mean, to me, that's special magic. And I'm just more of a studio fan than I am live things. I like reissues of real product. Of course, you're going to hear Bart and I rave about the further in time it gets from the source tape, the more questionable it becomes, because it's a fact you're listening to processing. You're not listening to the record itself. The record's made back in 1950, and then you're told here in 2024 this is the greatest sounding thing ever. How could it possibly be, with the deterioration of the medium all through that time? It's just impossible. Um, that's another thing, but we'll save that for another day. But generally, Record Store Day, there's some concepts that they're going to push, and Bart and I are going to talk a little bit probably more about this Beatles thing with the 3-inch CD. That's a really big issue, and they've been pushing that for a long time, and it's going to be interesting to see what Bart thinks about the impact of the Beatles being now the ones that they're selling the records for. They've tried different things in the past, and I know that Bart's actually, has one in his store now, and I'm not sure what his feeling is about it, but generally, my feeling is these kind of formats are not, if they're not practical, they're not going to, they're not going to work out. So it's those things that I'm not really such a fan of. I think some of the limited edition stuff is, and the pressing quantities are something that I think you should pay close attention to. To me, it seems like some of these are low this year. There's a great number of records out this year that I am excited about. But at the same time, the quantities are quite low on some of them. So you do run the risk of not getting things. If you're a reasonably aggressive collector and you know your way around the internet and know the places that have generally the largest stock, those are the places that you generally go to the day after. And that's the thing I think you'll probably hear Bart talk about that I've noticed, that there's a wild fluctuation of records that they put out that it's instantly known that they didn't press enough. So you've got everybody here, going out. And that's why some of these people in Record Store Day put a limit on what you can buy in some of these larger stores, because somebody will go in and grab the most valuable thing, or thing that's purported to go up in value. They'll take them all and then trickle them out on eBay here over a long period of time. And that happens. And with any other record, it's supply and demand. So it's kind of a thorny subject there. You've got something that is intended to be, spread among the fans, and sometimes, people just buy up quantities of them if they can, or find a way to get them, and they're not even fans of the music. They're buying them for resale. So that happens, and that was especially acute. I saw a few years ago, I was in line at the record store, and I noticed all these younger girls, and they were there for the Taylor Swift 45. And my God, it wasn't a few minutes later where they were all crying. I remember my son Joe, and I were out there filming them, but so many people were disappointed. So many people were excited. Oh, I got it. I got it. And the other people came out. You could tell they were crying. And it was wild. I've never seen, but some of those people were out there overnight. And anytime something creates that kind of a hype or puts that kind of blood into it and gets people together and talking and things, that's what this is all about. I mean, really the good feelings of the music, the times with your friends, enjoying it, discussing it, feeling the vibe from it, and that's what's important. And I guess it doesn't matter whether it's Taylor Swift or whether you're some old hippie, grooving out to today's placid imitation of the Grateful Dead. I guess you're probably better off with jam band. Truthfully, with the age, you're probably better off if you're really into the music. Probably better with one of the younger bands. They probably have more energy live. Some of those things I've seen with the Dead live aren't good. I also notice on those Dead archive things, you don't see a lot of stuff from the later years. We'll talk a lot about that too. But most of the artists on the list, me as a 63-year-old man, I still know. I admit that there are increasing as the time goes on. There's increasing artists that I don't know about that are hip hop stars or that. Some of these I get through, some of these I find out through Whatnot. Whatnot is a great app. I'm a big fan of VC Vinyl on Whatnot. Mike and Caden are my man there. Those guys been selling me things for a long time. And, I'm one of these guys that gets it to listen. I'm not a reseller. I do have a little rack, and I'm looking over there to the right. I do have a little rack over there that I do sell on Discogs. And really, those are just doubles that I have. I try to offset some of the stuff that I get. But generally, Record Store Day is exciting. So I'll drop usually 5 or 6 records, maybe even more. So I'll have some this time that we'll talk about. I am excited about a couple things, but there are a couple things that, as my son would say, are somewhat sus. So I'm looking forward to this. And the fact that it's on 420, I'm kind of surprised there's not more cannabis-themed things, being that there's all this push and nationwide. We live here in West Virginia. It's funny that marijuana was always a pretty big thing growing up here. And I think the people around here have always been, somewhat more accepting and somewhat more lax of things. Maryland, it's funny that Maryland is a state, I think, that's legalized now or so. And of course, Washington, D.C. is one of the more famous ones with their gifting scene. But yeah, that I'm surprised that I didn't see, and maybe there's some stuff on there that I didn't see on this list, but we'll go through this list and enjoy it. Let me give you here, before we stop, let me give you a Tony's tip, and as I said, it's going to be a rant. One of the artists that I really, really was affected by as a kid, and I told you that you may know, you may not know. There's records over my shoulder. Those are my records. So I've been making records for I don't know, a couple of decades now. But before that, I'd taken some time off. But growing up, the big ones that hit me hard. Todd Rundgren hit me hard. Frank Zappa hit me huge hard. Brian Wilson. Then you get into the jazz, Miles, Coltrane. I mean, you're really talking about, those are probably some of the top people that hit you hard. But one of the things that I'd spoken about, one of the artists here, Frank Zappa, has a release coming out here. Let me see what the name of this thing is. I'm looking on this page here. Frank Zappa, Zappa for President. So what this is going to be, it's a 2 LP thing. It has some synclavier stuff on it. And to me, I can't help but hearing that there's some synclavier stuff on this. I can't help but being just completely floored that not only through the Zappa Family Trust, but through Universal Music and whoever else has a hand in this, have never released Civilization Phase III, Frank Zappa, on vinyl. That record, or that CD, was released back in 1993. Anybody who is a fan of Frank Zappa knows that that record was very close to Frank Zappa. He worked so diligently and so doggedly on that project for the last almost decade of his life. And to have nothing come of it on vinyl, have no promotion of it whatsoever. Instead, what do we get from the Zappa Family Trust? Well, let's have a Halloween mask. Let's have a holographic tour with a hologram of Frank. And Dweezil singing, or not Dweezil, Ahmet singing, "My guitar wants to kill your mama." I've got no problem with Dweezil. Dweezil has done it fine. The Zappa Family Trust, I think, has cheesed out everything, has done everything for the dollar. And this whole series of Halloween stuff, the last ever band show, my God, you have regular records released by the man himself who decided this is an album I want, and you put something else out in front of that? You substitute your judgment for his? I'm sorry, I have a big problem with that. And I think the way the Zappa Family Trust has treated Civilization Phase III is a dishonor to Frank Zappa. And I think it's a disgrace given how important the record was to him. Any of us who know the record, who have studied the record, understand the complexity of the record. I can't help but think that a lot of it is missed, that people don't understand it. There's a reason this record took so long. It deals in microtonality. It deals in ambience. It deals almost in that place where ambient noise meets sound. It is astounding on so many levels. And I understand the transfer to vinyl, the compression. I understand the issues with that. But to have not re-released that and not highlighted that, which in my opinion is one of the great works of modern music, it's a disgrace given how important it was to him. I know it was important to him. Anybody who was a follower of him cannot deny it. He was talking about it and working on it for a decade. And I think it's high time the Zappa Family Trust release Civilization Phase III on vinyl, and also the real 1988 live band records, Make a Jazz Noise Here, etc., on vinyl. They each make nice sets equaled out to 4 records. Would work fantastic. So I urge whoever the powers that be to please put your quest for money or however you want to commercialize Frank aside and have the same attitude towards it that he did, that art is the only thing that matters. And the only thing that matters is to make music that satisfies yourself. Civilization Phase III is monumental, and it has not been treated like that by the Zappa Family Trust. I don't want to make all these things negative. I want to be a happy person. You can make me very happy by putting this out, but I have been complaining about this online for a long time. And this to me is a very disappointing sore spot because I was a very big Frank Zappa fan. I had all the bootlegs, I had everything growing up. And they have really dropped, in my estimation, have dropped the ball. And that's all I have to say on that. I encourage somebody to take over the situation. That I have no problem with them putting out these other periods. But my God, give credence to the man and his situation first and what he decided to put out before you issue those. That's all I have to say with this. You guys have a good weekend or whatever day it is, a good day. Remember to like, subscribe, and follow when you can. And we will be back at you with some more fun and hopefully less grumpy stuff. But I'm sorry about this deal with the Zappa thing, but this thing has bothered me for a long period of time. Till next time, sayonara. But wait, this is not over because in the interim, before we could get it to be published, guess what happens? Record Store Day. And when Record Store Day happens, we have this little related sucker. Frank Zappa for president, the latest in the cheesy, catalogly named treasure. What is really most disappointing about this is that it's only 3 sides of music. They had to do a special colored etch thing, which is, when I think about it, this is not what Zappa's music's all about. And this what's been emphasized, the kitsch, the colored vinyl, their own projects. This is not a Frank Zappa project. This might have been something Frank Zappa might have thought about. Maybe there's some argument. I didn't look in it. I don't really care. I don't need brown shoes. Don't make it. By the way, the condition of the tape on this is pretty bad. And America the Beautiful is kind of silly. We've heard that from the live thing. When the lie's so big, it's an okay version. But I'll hand it to the Zappa Family Trust is that they have proven that synclavier music, they can compress it so it works on vinyl. Because the overture to Uncle Sam, even though I don't have any idea really what it has to do with Uncle Sam, I mean, the music, I guess maybe the themes or something, that's what Frank called it. It's really nice. It has a lot of the fast little moving, syncopated, microtonal things happening with real fast little what I consider to be, like fast little scooting little sounds. And it's interesting the way he always uses brush when he does it. It's almost as if he's trying to simulate the sound of little bugs or something with like many millipedes going, scurrying. I mean, it's almost the sound like that. But Amnerica, the vocal version, I love the tune, fantastic, recognize it right away. There's not much vocals on it. There's little vocals at the beginning. And then the If I Was President monstrosity, which is just why the hell they couldn't peel, maybe they couldn't do it. They couldn't peel but it's embarrassing. I mean, it's just this monologue where Zappa's playing, and it's the early synclavier music, and it's fantastic. And I want to hear it unobstructed. I don't know. I mean, Medieval Ensemble's fantastic too. I mean, the stuff they have enough here to make one record, which they should have done, and made one synclavier record like maybe Moo Masons or something like that. But I'll tell you, man, the fact of we're sitting here, just to reiterate the situation, we're sitting here and we have a record like this, and I'm supporting Zappa, and I open it up, and I see this nice flash color vinyl. Just like when the people pull their mask out, or, when they saw the hologram tour, or when they bought their millionth record that the archive has decided is a new deal. Well, you know what, man? I think that Zappa really stood for something that was not for all this stuff, was not for this colored vinyl, was not for these things put together. I liked what he picked out. I liked the records that he made. And I see no reason at this point, again, why we cannot have 4 LP versions of Civilization Phase III and all that you can't do that on stage anymore, 1 through 6. Those are records compiled by the artist, Frank Zappa. But instead, again, we get the final show of the tour. I'm just,
I don't know what they're chasing after with all this Halloween stuff, all these other things that they've done. You know, funky nothingness. What an appropriately named thing, because I didn't hear much happening on it. I was not excited by it. Some people love it. It's an undocumented thing. But why the hell are you releasing all this undocumented stuff like this when you don't have the catalog yet on vinyl? And you don't celebrate the record that the man spent a great part of the last years of his life on. You'd think out of respect you'd do that. But maybe it's not all about the music anymore. I think if the ZFT is going to continue to make the releases that they make, then that warning guarantee thing should be taken out, because they're not living up to it, man. I've been very disappointed, very disappointed. Buffalo record, fantastic. Some of these things that they put out, fantastic. But your priorities are screwed when you don't have the wishes of the man himself first, and the base is covered first. Vinyl has been on the scene, hot and heavy, for many, many years. And you have just proven with the compression or whatever problems you have with the super dynamic versions of the Sinclair record that it'll make it on vinyl. Mine played fine. It was beautiful. Now give us Civilization Phase III, please. Please give us Civilization Phase III on vinyl. I'm sick of begging for it. I'm sick of having to beg for the main focus of this man's work for probably the last 10 to 15 years of his life. Can you please put it out on vinyl for all of us? People will buy it. I don't know about this. I mean, I think a lot of people bought this expected to hear Muffin Man, and when they hear this, I'm wondering what they're thinking. I mean, they see the little tag, they see the Sinclair thing, but how many people really look at that? They don't. A lot of them don't. A lot of people want all the Zappa stuff like me, and they go ahead and buy it. So please, can you please make sure that duty number one is loyalty to the man's wishes while he was alive? That should be your first base, the baseline. You want to make your own records after that? You want to make your own little projects and try to add them to the numbers? That's fine. But they're not Frank records. They're your records. Funky Nothingness is a ZFT record. You know, Zappa for President is a ZFT record. They're not a Frank Zappa record. They're a vault record that was released later. Buffalo is a ZFT record. Anything posthumous other than the work he was doing at the time, which is the last thing he was doing, if you want to make a technical thing about it, he died before the release of Phase 3, but Phase 3 was done when he did. I just want to hear Inlight on vinyl, please. Those of you who don't get it, I understand. It's not rock and roll. If you like rock and roll, that's not what this is. This is not rock and roll. This is a completely different thing. This is more... Is 200 Motels a bridge to it? A little bit. Jazz from Hell certainly is. But, man, please, guys, put it out here. This indeed is the end of the video. Thank you very much for seeing this end thing. My verdict on this, again, I hate the presidential presentation. I hate the cheeseball emphasis on the red, white, and blue vinyl and the da-da-da-da. Come on, man. I mean, just make a new record. Make a single record of the Sinclair stuff and cut out all the other stuff that we have. The Lie's So Big and Another Brown Shoes Don't Make It. And America the Beautiful. We don't need that. You can make a nice record with just Overture to Uncle Sam, America, If I Was President with the stuff taken off of it, and Medieval Ensemble. That would be one, one good second record you would have would be the other one here, and you'd have about, it would be a short record, it'd be 30 minutes, but put something else on there. Find us something else if you're going to do that. But thank you anyway for putting out. At least we get some stuff. I will thank you to that extent, but thank you very much. See you guys next time.